folks that are going to talk about and update the things that are going on, and then after that we'll open it up for questions. Please mute your mics. If we missed you, we're going to mute everybody so that we don't have any distracting noise. And we're going to go ahead and just give some updates from the association standpoint. We had a Zoom meeting this morning with some of our instructors as we continue to move forward to put together some online virtual CE, so that our members that can't cluster in big groups because of the quarantine can still have access to CE. So we've got that project, a couple of other things going on. I'm going to go ahead and, again, because I don't want to talk a lot, we've got people that got more important things to say than I do. So I want to hand it over to Jerry Foreign first with West Virginia Real Estate Commission and let him give an update on what's going on.
Thanks, Ray. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. As you guys all probably know, I sent out an update last Friday, and hopefully you were all able to read that update. But just a couple of quick things. There's been a lot of questions asked me lately about office hours and those types of issues. We are currently not opening our office to the public, although most of us are here at least once or twice a week to take care of mail, voicemail, you name it. Anything that comes in, we're processing on a regular basis. But you cannot just walk into the office, and we've had several people ask if they could do that, and our offices are closed. The other question I got was about renewals, because our renewal season is coming up very soon. As you guys all know, we start on May 1st. A renewal letter will be going out probably early next week. One of the things I've done this morning was sit down and complete the renewal letter and get all the data to send over to our printing folks at the state so that they can get those letters printed up and sent out. You know, a large portion of that is the CE. Ray and I have been working closely to allow Zoom training for CE, and we're waiving some of the rules to be able to do that. So if you guys have any questions about that, once we get to the question and answer session, I'll be happy to answer anything that I can. We have had a few very negative comments, believe it or not. There's a lot of people who are not happy with CE online. They believe they can't learn online. Even though we've had CE available online for years, all of a sudden now most folks seem to want it, or let me rephrase that, the folks that are complaining seem to want it in person only. The commission and the commissioners, when we met last, decided we were not going to waive any of the requirements, and we do believe that everyone can get the CE they need via Zoom or via some of the other methods that are already out there. Let me take a look at my notes here. The only other thing that I want to update you on today is the testing centers. As you guys know, our testing centers at PSI have been closed now for a couple of weeks. We've been working with PSI this week, and it looks like if everything goes the way we hope it does, the centers will be opened up for limited testing the middle of April. And what I mean by limited is they're going to only take 1 or 2 people at a time. They're going to make sure that you know, everything's cleaned after each usage, the keyboards, everything, following all the instructions about trying to keep everyone safe from this virus. It's not a perfect solution, but at least it will allow folks to start testing again. And then if this goes much further down the road, we're looking at doing something where folks can actually test from home. But that would be a last case scenario. But other than that, that's all that I have for this week's update. So back to you, Ray.
Thank you, Jerry. Then we're still waiting for our legal counsel to connect. Amy is working with him to connect. So while we're waiting for that, we'll go ahead and go. Drew, can you hear me?
I can. I think I just.
Okay.
You have me?
Yeah, I got you. I'll just hand it over to you. You can introduce yourself and your other colleague from NAR, and I'll let you guys take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ray. Drew Myers with NAR. I'm political representative covering a variety of states, one of which, of course, being the great state of West Virginia. So thanks, Ray, for the opportunity to be here and speak with your members today. Digitally, I certainly have had the opportunity to meet several of you, I think, and look forward to the day that we all can meet in person again, hopefully in the not too distant future. So just want to give you a brief update here today on a little bit of what we're working on in Washington. On behalf of realtors everywhere, I'm fortunate to have colleague Megan Booth with me as well to go into detail. She's one of our policy experts at NAR and will be able to go into greater detail, especially on the CARES Act, this phase 3 legislation that just passed a few days ago. But just want to start with a brief introduction and talk for just a second about what we've done leading up to this phase 3 legislation. So we have focused specifically on advocating for self-employed, independent contractors and small business relief in really every emergency response package. And we'll continue to do so as more proposals are considered, getting through April and into May and beyond. Additionally, we're in constant communication with industry partners to ensure that we are united in defending the real estate industry and minimizing transaction disruptions as much as possible during these times. I want to take just a second to touch on a few of our resources that we have available to you all online currently. I certainly would be remiss if I did not mention that we have launched a microsite, essentially a page on our website that's serving as a centralized hub for all information and resources available to you all during this crisis. So that's nar.realtor/coronavirus. Of course, you can also just go to the webpage, the homepage, and search coronavirus and find it that way as well. In addition to that, we have just recently activated a program that first initiated back in 2008 during the 2008 crisis called Right Tools Right Now. This program makes new and existing NAR products and services available for free or at significant discounts to members. So again, I think something you can find on our website to learn more about that program and other things. Also, in addition to that, we have repurposed our hotline. So it is now open and available to take questions on really anything and everything coronavirus related. So something else there as well for your use that you can find on your website, but if you want to jot, or on our website, but if you want to jot it down, that number is 1-800-874-6500. So with that, I want to just take 1 minute to highlight some of the high points of the phase 1, what you're hearing called phase 1 and phase 2 packages of essentially the legislative packages or the stimulus packages that are being discussed before we get into the most recent one, the CARES Act, that I know you all want to hear more. So on March 5th and 6th, early March, as an immediate response to the impact of COVID-19, Congress passed and then subsequently the President signed H.R. 6074. This is the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. It's a mouthful there. But that's the legislation that you all probably heard in the news, provided $8.3 billion in immediate emergency funding designed to treat and prevent the widespread transmission and effects of COVID-19. It's targeted at really slowing the spread of the virus. This phase 1 legislation allocates a significant portion of the funding to HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, for vaccination research, CDC emergency funding, medical equipment, et cetera. So largely healthcare related and specifically focused on immediate emergency disaster relief. About 2 weeks after that, around March 18th, Congress passed and the President signed into what was called phase 2 of the relief package, and that was House Bill 6201, also known as the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. So this legislation provided for free COVID-19 testing nationwide, including for those that, created expanded emergency paid sick and family leave for workers affected by the virus, which was a big part of what we were working on there, and that includes those that are self-employed. In addition to that, it also, in order to support the businesses that are, by this legislation now required to provide the expanded leave, this legislation also creates 100% refundable tax credits that provide a dollar-for-dollar offset to businesses for the cost. Further, in an attempt to offset the burdens of anticipated unemployment, The bill also provides about $1 billion, a billion with a B, to states to process and pay unemployment. So phase 2 was largely focused on providing relief to individuals who were finding themselves out of work. And with that, I want to kick it now to my colleague Megan Booth to go into a little more detail on this phase 3 legislation that just passed last week, Senate Bill 3548, also known as the CARES Act.
All right, thank you, Drew. I'm going to try and I put together a little quick PowerPoint for y'all. So if you are online and can see, I'm going to try and share my screen. We'll see if this is going to work. Okay, so let me start by saying that many of the details of what's coming out of this legislation are still unknown. The legislation that the president signed was sort of a framework for a bunch of new programs. And so the different agencies within the federal government and the state governments are going to need to implement these. And it's not happening, overnight. It is expected that all the programs will be available within the next 10 to 14 days. And for the most up-to-date information, I strongly encourage you to go to those resources that Drew talked about. We have our own coronavirus FAQ available on our website, and we have a summary of the CARES Act, and we are literally updating those at least once a day, if not more, as we get more and more information. So let me say that what I'm going to tell you today is the best available information today. Things are changing rapidly as these programs are actually being implemented. So we're doing the best to provide all of our information on that website, and hopefully by the end of the next 10 days, details on all these programs will be available. The federal government, an agency within the federal government called CISA, has provided a list of essential critical infrastructure workers across the country. Some of them have been deemed essential, some are non-essential. In the most recent iteration, residential and commercial real estate settlement services were deemed as essential. But what's important to know about that is governors still have control over the states. So governors get to decide what is essential businesses in their states. So whatever they say in West Virginia is what applies to you. The federal government just sort of puts out guidance for the governors of the states to help them decide. Another thing to point out real quickly is, and we'll get a little bit more into this later, is that being considered essential does not make you ineligible for other services such as employment. So you may still be able to apply for the pandemic unemployment insurance even if you have been fully or partially unemployed, or even if you are still considered essential. We're waiting on further guidance from the Department of Labor with respect to that program, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Relief from individuals. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what kind of things are individuals going to get. Hopefully you've all heard that you're all going to get a check from the IRS. They're going to be mailed starting today. It is based on your 2018 taxes or your 2019 tax return, whatever the most recent that you have filed. It has a cap. They're equal to $1,200 per adult plus $500 for every child under the age of 17. They are capped for individuals making over $75,000 if they file singly, $150,000 if they file jointly, or $112,500 if you file as a head of a household. You can also take withdrawals from retirement accounts, including 401ks and IRAs. You will not have a penalty if you take that money out early, and you can put them back. You can pay back into your account if you want to over a 3-year period, but that's not required. There's a lot of scams going on right now where people are calling you and telling you they need your bank account information in order to get your check mailed to them. Please do not fall for this. It's a scam. The IRS already knows how to get in touch with you, and they will provide your refund check as soon as they can. They have also, if you're worried about paying your taxes that are due on April 15th, they have delayed the due date to file and to pay any taxes that you have due to July 15th without any penalty. And I put a link in here to the IRS website with all the information about that. Okay, a couple of pieces of information for homeowners and renters. So homeowners that have a loan that is touched by the government in some way, so it's an FHA loan, it's a VA loan, it's a USDA loan, or it's a loan that's securitized by Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, they can request forbearance for up to a year. They do not have to prove proof of hardship, but they do have to contact their servicer. These are not automatic. You have to call and request it. So whatever contact information that they have on their coupon or their payment stub that they get for their mortgage payment, they have to call that person and request it. It's also important to know that you need to work with your servicer on how you're going to repay it. So if you just get plain old forbearance, which is what you're eligible for, on the 361st day, an entire year's worth of your mortgage payments will become immediately due. That would obviously be a big challenge for people. So we encourage you to talk to your servicer. Most of them are offering some sort of repayment plans. For renters can also, renters who are in a, I think somebody's talking. Does someone have a question or? Okay, I'll do questions at the end. For renters who are in a property that also is attached to one of these loans. So if you are a landlord and you have a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA loan, then your renters can ask for relief from eviction for 120 days, for 4 months. It's important, again, to know that this does not relieve them of the obligation to pay their rent. They still owe their rent. You cannot evict them during those 120 days. So we are encouraging renters to contact their landlord and try and work out a payment plan with their landlord. If they can pay part of the rent now, if they can pay, some of the rent, you want to make, if you're a landlord, you want to make it clear to them that they are still obligated to pay their rent. It may be at the end of those 120 days, but again, I don't think any of them want a big balloon payment at the end of 120 days of all their rent payments. So you cannot charge them late fees or interest on that. These are only for loans that are, again, touched by one of these federal programs. Landlords who are touched by these federal programs are also eligible for forbearance. If you have a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, you have the best options. You have full forbearance for the time of the crisis. If you have an FHA loan or any other loan that's backed or assisted by any branch of the federal government, you can request forbearance for mortgage payments for up to 90 days. And again, we're encouraging everyone to call your servicer. The Treasury Department and some other agencies in the government are trying to set up ways to assist the lenders and the servicing community and dealing with this loss of payments over the months. So a lot of them are making arrangements for some kind of repayment plan. Okay, so if you are a realtor who sells houses for a living, what do you do now? Again, your ability to sell homes depends on your local and state laws with respect to social distancing and whether or not you're considered an essential service. NAR wants to make it important that you have the responsibility and mandate to take all necessary health and safety precautions, including those required by your state, even if those include things like holding no in-person showings or limiting all other people within your showing activities and observing all social distancing guidelines referred to by the CDC. Our legal department has put together these great options for you right here that talk about what you should be doing in terms of how you can show houses. Mabel Guzman, who's NAR's 2020 VP of Association Affairs, also put together a great little video showing you how she does virtual showings. She's been doing virtual showings for years with her clients, and so she has some great information on how you can do virtual showings. A couple of questions to go through. We're hearing from a lot of people that their lender has said that their FHA or Freddie or Fannie has increased credit scores and reserves. First of all, that is not true. Lenders are doing that themselves. None of the federal loan programs have changed any of their credit score requirements. So a lot of lenders are doing it on their own because they're worried about the forbearance and how they're going to pay their investors. But the federal government has not changed any credit scores. With respect to reserves, if your client cannot get any kind of verification of employment, there may be a change in what's required from their reserves. So right now, all of the agencies, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, FHA, VA, rural housing, are accepting oral or email verification of employment. So most workplaces, if they are actually still in operation and that person is legitimately still employed, are able to provide some kind of work verification in that manner. Only if someone cannot provide any type of verification of employment, then FHA and Freddie and Fannie have put in guidance saying that they are then required to show increased reserves, about 2 months reserves. Each of the programs is slightly different, but about an extra 2 months of reserves, which is a lot. If you're an FHA buyer, that is absolutely a lot, and that will be challenging. But hopefully, assuming they actually are still employed, which they would have to sign something agreeing that they are in their closing documents anyway, they should be able to show some kind of income verification. Again, some lenders might not be accepting this, and none of the programs require lenders to follow their guidelines. So you might want to try a different lender if your lender is saying they won't do it. What about appraisals? Any mortgage program, again, touched by a government program, Freddie, Fannie, FHA, VA, rural housing, they have released guidance allowing for external appraisals and desktop appraisals. So if you need to get a, if the appraiser refuses to come to the property, or the homeowner doesn't want to let an appraiser in the property, they can do an external appraisal or a desktop appraisal. And in fact, Freddie and Fannie said that they will also allow the use of MLS data to secure that, to write that appraisal. So there should be lots of flexibility there. Again, lenders can put on their own overlays, and there's not a lot we can do about that. E-closings and notaries. A number of states do allow for remote notary at this time. There's a link there, and I just realized you cannot click on that, so I will have Drew provide you with the link to that. NAR is also supporting legislation to allow a remote notary and e-closings nationwide, which we hope will be in phase 4, which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. Okay, there's 3 major new programs that are available for independent contractors and small businesses, new programs or tweaks to existing programs. The first one I'm going to talk about is pandemic unemployment benefits. This is a brand new temporary federal program which will be administered at the state level. Many states, and I don't know about West Virginia, but many states in the past have not allowed independent contractors or self-employed people to apply for unemployment benefits. This new program by the federal government will now allow them to receive pandemic unemployment benefits. You will be eligible if you have been fully or partially unemployed as a result of an inability to work because of the coronavirus. The program provides up to $600 per week for up to 4 months on top of the amount already provided under your state's compensation law through the end of December. So we will see how, you won't know how much it is until your state accepts the program and provides their information, but that's how you do it. They basically base their compensation amounts on individual wages from the most recent tax year and net income from all self-employment that was reported on your tax return. If you can telework with pay or have paid sick leave or expanded family and medical leave, then you cannot apply for unemployment insurance. So if you are fully employed, but you're just working from home or whatever that you weren't before, or if you're taking family sick leave, or if you're getting paid for sick leave, you cannot get it. These have, again, as I said, these have to be agreed to between the states and the federal government. And you can get a total of up to 39 weeks of payment with the additional $600 per week for the first several weeks. More details of that will be coming out as the states address these. But I will warn you, if you go to your state's unemployment website right now, it may say you're not eligible, and that's just because they haven't updated it with the new program. Okay, a second one is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. This is an existing program of the Small Business Administration, but the CARES Act legislation provided some enhancements. It broadened the definition of small business to include any business that operates with 500 or fewer employees, and franchises with 500 and fewer employees are eligible. The limit on these loans is $2 million, but you can receive up to a $10,000 advance on these loans, the EIDL loans from lenders, which is supposed to be dispersed within 3 days of application. And that $10,000 advance can be forgivable. Again, a lot of this information will be available soon on the SBA website, and there is a link there for you to see where to go for there. And they also have a customer service line. The SBA is also very good. If you have never applied for an SBA loan, now they have people a whole hotline set up just to help you apply for the loans even. Another type of loan they are now offering is called a payroll protection plan. These loans are based on the average monthly payroll expenses of a business multiplied by 2.5 and capped at $10 million. They are intended to cover expenses for businesses during any 8-week period between February 15th of this year and June 30th of this year. They can be used for payroll costs, rents, mortgage interest, and utilities. If a business owner maintains a certain level of payroll expenses and employee numbers during that 8-week period, the loan can be 100% forgiven. And if employees go below that level, then the amount forgivable is phased out. We are waiting on further guidance from the SBA on this as well. And there is a link there for you to find out more information as soon as we find out. So this is if you have payroll and people that you pay in your business. One question we get a lot of times, can you be eligible for both types of loans? And the answer is yes, but they can't go to the same thing. So you can't use an EIDL loan for payroll and then get a payroll protection plan loan. But you could get an EIDL loan to help you pay, say, rent or other business expenses, and then use the PPP loan for payroll. A couple of things for people who do commercial real estate. We are trying to get extensions to the deadlines in both the 1031 like-kind exchange program and in the qualified opportunity zone program. We have written to the Treasury, and we have several members of Congress also writing to the Treasury. We are hopeful they will expand those shortly. We think they can do it administratively without legislation. If you are a property manager, I encourage you to go to IREM's website. They have a great pandemic guide for property managers and a lot of good information on their website as well that's available without having a password or being a member. A couple other things. There's a qualified improvement property fix that was included in the CARES Act. Businesses are now able to write off immediately any costs associated with making internal improvements to certain real estate, including restaurants, retail stores, and office buildings, instead of having to depreciate them over the 39-year life of the building. This will allow companies to file for refunds with an amended tax return for 2018 to access cash, and also will allow them to continue to invest in improvements to the building. There are also provisions to allow businesses to offset tax losses. The bill allows businesses to carry back net operating expenses net operating losses from 2018, 2019, or 2020 against profitable years up to 5 years back and get immediate refunds. Property owners can also be eligible for a number of the SBA programs. A rental housing provider that qualifies as a small business and operates in a state with a presidential declaration of a disaster is eligible for the EIDL loans and the PPP loans that we talked about. Okay, so what's next? We are awaiting further guidance from the SBA and the Department of Labor. I know everyone is going to have a lot of questions on how those programs will impact them. And to be honest, we just don't know. Everything I've told you is pretty much everything we know. Although, as I said, we are updating our FAQ at least every day. There's going to be a brand new one that goes up probably by 5 o'clock today that is just on the SBA loan programs. So every piece of information we get, we are putting out through those FAQs. So I encourage you to look for those. Congress is sort of out of session right now. They are officially out of session, but there's still a lot of conversations going on, and they have started working on phase 4. So the act that I just talked about was phase 3 of the relief programs. Phase 4 is already in development. Congress will be back by the end of April at the latest. They could come back early if they come to agreement on some kind of package before that. They have funky ways of passing things without people actually being in DC. So for phase 4, I can tell you we are focusing on a couple of things. We're focusing on making remote notary and e-closings available across the country, increasing funds for housing counseling for people who are going through forbearance or job loss. They're going to need additional help, and we think we need more money out there for housing counseling groups. Relief for landlords to ensure that if your community is prohibiting evictions, there's some relief for the landlord for paying their mortgage for all types of mortgages, not just federally connected mortgages, and at least matching up on the federally connected mortgages. Right now, the renters get 4 months, the landlords get 3 months. We think everyone should be entitled to the same relief. And there's a couple other things we're looking at, some other tax benefits, some other things. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. I hope everybody is staying safe and is doing the best they can in these weird circumstances. And I'm happy to try and take questions.
All right. Thank you, Megan. We'll get back to questions as soon as Brad's joined us now. And I also wanted to let you guys know, and from your end, Megan, we are an essential service in West Virginia. Okay. We got that designation from our governor, and we got Jerry mentioned earlier about how he got some angry calls. Believe it or not, we got a few angry calls as well. And I won't go in. They were outnumbered by the thank yous, probably 10 to 1. but we did get a few. And so I felt the need to tell you also, there is a specific reason we did it. We did it because there were lots of things in process, and those things in process would have been stopped conceivably a week before closing, things like that, if we would have been deemed non-essential. So we wanted to protect the people that had rate locks. We wanted to protect the people that were already involved in the process. We're going to close in 3 days or 5 days or 10 days. We did it. Our members, the lenders, the closing attorneys, everybody supported doing it, as long as we did it in a safe way. There are lots of people out there still conducting business, still having closings, still showing houses. They're just doing it in very, very safe ways. So with that, I'm going to hop over to Brad and let him talk about some of the specifics of the executive order from the governor. And then at that point, we will go to any questions for anybody. Thank you for adding. Megan is adding those links in the chat section. So for those of you that want to see the links that she was talking about. Drew, before I go to Brad, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, Ray, I'm good. And we will definitely, thanks for mentioning that. I just pulled the chat up and see that Megan's adding a lot of these links. And if there's any other information now or as we get into questions, I'll make sure that we get all that information out to you so that you can provide it to your members.
Great, I appreciate it. All right, Brad, go ahead. You can take over now.
All right, thank you. Sorry I was late. I had a technology fail trying to get in the Zoom room or whatever you call it. I've been looking over some of the executive orders entered recently, and there's a number of them. Some of them don't really apply to us at all. You got regulations regarding medical procedures and changing regulations on how nurses have to be certified. There's just a whole host of them. A couple, the main executive order, which is number 9-20, entered on March 23rd, is the one that it's commonly referred to as the stay-at-home order, and it shuts down all non-essential businesses. And if we get back way back in the order to paragraph 3U, it designates professional services. Professional services such as legal services, accounting services, insurance, real estate services, including appraisal and title services, are declared to be essential and therefore exempt from the shutdown provision, and people working in the professional service sector are exempt with respect to their work from the stay-at-home order. So that gives us actual authority to carry on. As Ray said earlier, though, extraordinary safety procedures need to be followed. I mean, I think it really needs to go without saying that if you're going to a site, for example, normally you might have your customer ride with you. Now you need to ride separately, maintaining distance and cleanliness at all times. This stay-at-home orders, the pages aren't numbered, but it's probably a 12-page order. But when you really get right down to it, that paragraph U is the one that affects realtors by declaring them to be an essential industry. The other order that seems to be of significance relates to unemployment compensation. And there, what the governor did, and this is order number 4-20, entered on March 19th, is it suspended a number of the restrictions that apply to unemployment applications prior to this emergency. For example, the 1-week waiting period for benefits is removed. The requirement that you be able and available for work is removed. The requirement that you be out searching for work is removed. And the actively seeking work requirement is removed. And the other thing it does is it gives the Department of Commerce, it gives them the direction to let the governor know if there's anything else that stands as an impediment for quickly getting unemployment compensation to the people that need it. They're supposed to notify the governor's office, and the governor will turn around and authorize them to interpret flexibly, modify, or waive those state laws. So this is really designed to streamline the unemployment process. I think that's really all I have on those two orders.
All right, then at this point, then we will open it up for any questions. If you want to raise your hands, and Amy can unmute you. Also, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Megan, Drew, Jerry. I will tell you that if we had at our peak, we've lost one. We had 81 participants, so obviously I think there's a need for this information to get out there by the number of people that have logged on. But I also want to tell you that as this is rapidly changing, and so what we hope to do now is to try to do this, and maybe some of the players will change, but we're going to try to do this every Wednesday at 2 o'clock while we're in this mode. So just to let you know that, and then I see some folks are getting questions answered in the chat room, but if anybody has any questions Drew, here's one for you guys for the NAR that I saw. I got it earlier today, and then I saw it pop up again. Is there any, I know there's discussion, but is there any decisions made yet on if they're going to suspend core standards requirements for this this cycle?
Megan, tell me if you have information on that I may not. I do know there has been some conversations regarding RPAC goals and some of that, and nothing has been decided from that standpoint yet that I'm aware. Is there any more information that you have, Megan?
No, I can tell you that they have been meeting about that, and they understand this is going to be a challenge for a lot of associations. So they are definitely looking into that. They should have a decision within the next week or two, I imagine.
Any other questions, Jerry, Brad, for anybody here? That means we did a really good job.
Hey, Ray, I do want to say a couple things real quick. Brad kind of made me remember something about some of these issues when he was giving his talk. And I just want to let everyone know that one of the probably the biggest question I've gotten over the last week, and Ray hit on this a little bit too, was why are realtors still out there working? And whenever I get that question, what I'm doing is referring everyone to the governor's order, the specific section which Brad mentioned, and just letting them read it for themselves. And Ray had mentioned he'd gotten a few upset calls about that too. The other call I'm getting about that are from brokers that are licensed in other states who want to know if they can still do business here. And when we refer them to that section, they're delighted that they can. I'm assuming that some states have decided not to allow realtors to go out and do that kind of work. So the majority of the calls we're getting all seem to have to do with the ability for you guys to go out and go to work. Other than that, the issues that we're getting all seem to be centering around CE. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that's the two issues that we're dealing with right now, mainly with the public.
This is like when you're sitting at a bar telling jokes, and then somebody tells a joke and it reminds you of a joke. So I will tell you, Jerry, yes, we, as far as I know, and if anybody knows any different, let me know. Maryland has deemed non-essential. Pennsylvania is struggling right now. In fact, I was on a conference call with their executive committee last night, telling them the way we did it and the way we handled things, because they're trying to reverse the governor's decision to make so that they can be an essential service. Ohio, real estate is essential. West Virginia, real estate is essential, just from our contiguous states. My last conversations with Virginia is they were in the same boat as Pennsylvania, struggling to try to get the governor's order amended to make them essential, and I believe that Kentucky is essential. So that's my update on our contiguous states. That's what I know. They all want to be, but so far I'm certain that Pennsylvania and Maryland are not, and I'm not sure about Virginia. Last I spoke to them, they were not. So we've got 3 and 3.
Ray, This is Amy.
Ray, as of yesterday, when I
Maryland-
spoke to Virginia, they were, I'm sorry, when I
That's
spoke
okay.
to Virginia yesterday, they were still not essential.
Okay.
Maryland, as of the 28th, included real estate in their essential services, so they are,
Okay.
but with limitations. And Eastern Panhandle Board of Realtors, I'm not sure who that is, but someone there has a question.
Me.
You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Just kind of wanted some advice on how the associations are handling their board meetings when their bylaws do not allow virtual meetings. It's my understanding through Robert's rules that that's not usually feasible. So advice on that from Ray or Brad?
And I'll let Brad chime in too. And I will tell you, for any EO questions and board questions, I'm going to try and I'll send you guys an email. We've had a couple of our executive officers at local boards ask us if we could do one of these meetings just to share information between the executive officers. So we're going to try to set that up in the next couple of days. And I'll let you know to answer some of those questions. But the state of West Virginia, and I believe Robert's rules allow for virtual meetings or electronic meetings as long as, and nobody will want to do this, of course, so it's okay, but as long as there's an opportunity to meet face to face. So in other words, if everybody wanted to come to your boardroom to have the meeting, they could, but nobody's going to choose to do that. So you could do it through Zoom. So Brad, do you want to talk about electronic meetings in the state law?
Sure. And with the caveat that I'm not a corporate expert type, but as I recall the statute, I think it says that electronic attendance is permissible if the bylaws of the entity authorize that. And I think, the problem you might run into is a lot of entities have not authorized that in their bylaws. So you've got that hurdle to get over. One thing that can always happen is that well, depending on what the procedure is for changing the bylaws, you could, if it's possible with the entity to get unanimous written consent, you could do that and make that change. The other possibility might be to simply have the executive committee declare this to be an emergency and essentially declare that meetings are going to be held in this way until such time as it's safe to meet in person, at which time the board will ratify and confirm what was done electronically. I think that would be a sufficient substitute.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands raised. If you have a question, you want to put it in the.
Can you hear me, Amy?
hand. Yes, Jeff.
Thank you. Couple questions. On the electronic notarization, where would we go to get more information about that at this point, I wonder?
So this is Megan. I could put a link in the chat to where you can go to get a list of which states are allowing for e-notary and also to the federal legislation. I'll put that in a link in the chat right now.
All right. Now on the, of course, I know that we're all talking about essential, being an essential service provider. And I know we're kind of limiting ourselves to that advice to people. I know we have to be cautious of what we say and safety first in all matters, but I just feel like that any direction that we give at this point in time, we just have to be very cautious about. And, one of the things that we're running into, I had a rather lengthy conversation with one of the larger title companies here in Huntington, and they're having real difficulty getting into courthouses. There are some courthouses that are completely closed down and are not allowing access into the record rooms. There's others that are doing it by appointment. So I guess the way that I feel, and most of you probably, if they can't access the courthouse, it's really a cork in the bottle and something. Need clarity on that, or we're going to have a lot of deals come to a grinding halt.
I'm also
I
putting
can
a link to a list of which courthouses are open and which ones are closed and what they're doing into the chat as well.
I can tell you that each state is, I mean, each county, excuse me, is treating it very differently right now, and they have the ability to do that to a certain degree. A lot of county courthouses. So if you know your friends in the courthouse to talk to them, a lot of county courthouses are taking the approach where they're closing to the general public, but they're opening to allow the recordation of deeds. And so that is happening more and more as people settle down about this. So they keep the public out, but they're letting attorneys come in and record deeds and carry on the real estate business because it's essential. So, but again, I don't know if that list you shared has that on there, Megan, but you're just going to have to call your own county courthouses and see what they're doing.
Well, Ray, let me ask you this about that. Would there be any way we could reach out to our friends in the governor's office? Because, I mean, in surrounding counties, you are right. Essentially, the county clerk has the authority as to how he is going to control his record room. And it's a lot of authority for an individual. So I know that one of the, in Cabell County right now, they're allowing 2 attorneys or law firms per day by appointment only. In Lincoln County, they're allowing no access whatsoever. In Wayne County, which I'm working on that right now, the clerk has said no access to anybody from the outside, which that can't continue. But I wonder if there's any direction that we could get from the governor on that to the county clerks to request that they open up for essential service providers.
Brad, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a problem because you got, 55 different kings of the courthouses out there. Getting a hold of somebody in the governor's office might be the best way to consolidate that. Otherwise, it's going to be a piecemeal endeavor.
Yeah, that's why I suggested that. Right now, you are fighting 55 different people, some that are extremely cautious, some that are paranoid, and most that just don't know what to do. So they need some direction on that issue, and it'll have a huge impact. I mean, I'm talking to surveyors, people checking titles, everybody. If they quit doing work, the banks are not going to, underwrite these loans, and we're all going to be sitting there twiddling our thumbs.
All right, then we'll see what we can figure out about that. I'll also let you know, Megan, because I don't know if it made our list, but Secretary of State in West Virginia has established emergency rules for electronic notarization. So we can go on his website and check out exactly the criteria and the process and so forth. But West Virginia Secretary of State has already filed, and I don't know on Jerry, the emergency rules. I don't know if he can file a super duper emergency rules to make them make it happen immediately, or how it's going to work in a state of emergency. But it's on it's on Secretary of State's website.
I have no idea. I didn't know that existed until just now.
I have to give credit to Real Estate Commissioner Robert Wright for texting me and letting me know that. So,
well, that was on the announcement earlier today on the governor's news conference. That's why I was asking where we could find that information locally, because it wasn't on the website before our conference call.
Ray, Mark Mincer has a question. Mark, you're unmuted.
Just not a question. I did click the link that Megan said for the courthouses. West Virginia, 1 is closed, 54 no information. So it's county by county. You would have to either go to the county website, I think, or make that call. That's it. That was Amy, just a statement.
Thanks, Mark.
anything else? Any other questions? Greenbrier County is open by appointment and has a drop box for attorneys, according to Martha Hilton. So Greenbrier County, Huntington's doing it by appointment. I'm not sure exactly who, but talked to a closing attorney in the Northern Panhandle, and I think most of their courthouses are open to attorneys only in the 4 counties of the Northern Panhandle, but I'm not positive about that. Any Northern Panhandle folks can tell me that? Mercer's open by appointment. Chuck Harvey says. We might just find out about all 55 counties right here. Paul, thank you. What about Ohio County or the Northern Panhandle counties? Do you know if their courthouses, your all's courthouses are open up there?
I think Ohio County is only by closed to the public.
Ohio County's appointment for appointment?
For attorneys, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I will keep. I'll keep you guys posted. And like I said, if you think this has been a value, we're going to try to do one every Wednesday at this time. But you'll watch your email for the links.
And the Facebook page.
And Facebook, we'll put it on our Facebook page to make the announcement. Like I said, the players may be the same. They may be different as things come up, but we certainly want to do our best to keep you guys informed. And I think this is probably the best way we can do it in this pandemic situation. Last call. Any comments, questions? Executive officers on here. I'll let you know a time later in the week for when we can get together on Zoom. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good to go.
Thank you.